finding the x and y-intercepts given the equation. So before I go into how to solve this problem, I kind of want to talk a little bit about x and y-intercepts of lines. And this is an unrelated line, so this line I've drawn here, this line that I've drawn here is unrelated to this equation down here. But I want to talk about the x and the y-intercept. So the x-intercept is going to be the place where the line hits the x-axis. I'm going to abbreviate to x-int. Notice that this point on this picture that I've drawn, it has an x coordinate, but it has a 0 for the y coordinate. So at the x-intercept, the y coordinate is 0. Likewise, if you look at the y-intercept, which is the place where the line hits the y-axis, you'll notice that its x coordinate is 0 and its y coordinate is actually a number. So the interesting thing is that at the y-intercept, x is equal to 0. At the x-intercept, y is equal to 0. We can use this in finding the x and y intercepts of a line just given the equation. So we don't have to be given a graph to find the x and y intercepts. So looking at 7x minus 3y equals 21, if I want to find the x-intercept, I want y to be equal to 0. So I'm going to plug y equals 0 in. So 7x minus 3 times 0, so y is 0, is equal to 21. But if you have 3 times 0, that's going to just be 0, which means I can ignore it altogether, and I will have 7x equals 21. Divide both sides by 7, and you get x equals 3. So the x-intercept is 3. Alex just has you answer it with a number. Technically, the x-intercept should be a point, so it should be the point 3, 0, but Alex is just going to have you enter it as a 3, so that's how I'm going to give it to you. All right, so that's the x-intercept. The y-intercept happens when x is equal to 0. So looking back at this same equation, 7x minus 3y equals 21, instead of x, I'm going to put in 0, and then I'm going to solve for y. So 7 times 0 minus 3y equals 21. 7 times 0 is just 0, so I can ignore it and put negative 3y equals 21. To get y by itself, I'm dividing both sides by negative 3. 21 divided by negative 3 is negative 7. So the y-intercept is negative 7. Once again, technically the y-intercept is a point. It should be the point 0, negative 7, because x was 0. But once again, Alex is going to have you entering it with just the number part, so I'm going to leave it like that. And that's all there is to this type of problem. Let's go ahead and try another. So negative x plus 2y equals 8. Let me show you how to do what I just did, but faster. So for the x-intercept, because you're just going to make y equal 0, it's almost as if you can just pretend that this part doesn't exist at all. So negative x plus 2y equals 8. If you're looking for the x-intercept, since you're plugging in y equals 0, it's almost like you can just pretend that that doesn't exist at all, and you have the equation negative 8x equals 8. To get x by itself, so it's negative x right now, technically you could look at that as being negative 1x, and then you would divide both sides by negative 1. So x is equal to 8 over negative 1 is negative 8. So the x-intercept here is negative 8. The point itself is negative 8, 0. for the y-intercept, we're going to do the same thing, but instead of ignoring the y part, we're going to ignore the x part. So it would be negative x plus 2y equals 8, but we're just going to pretend this part isn't here, and we're going to solve for y, because if we plugged in 0, it would just make that x disappear. So here I can divide both sides by 2, and I get y equals 4. So the y-intercept is 4, which is the point 0, 4. So I think you can probably see the pattern, but let's just do it once more for fun. 6x minus 2y equals negative 6. I'm going to use my fun shortcut way. One thing I will warn you on this problem, there's going to be a box where it says like X-intercept, and there's a box, and then it'll have Y-intercept, and there's a box. Sometimes they're going to flip-flop this on you without warning you, so be very careful when you're entering your answers to make sure you're entering the right one in the right place, because they will flip-flop those boxes on you. All right, so for the X-intercept, I can ignore the y part, so I can just look at 6x equals negative 6, because if I plug in y equals 0, it's just going to disappear anyway. Dividing both sides by 6, I'm going to get, those cancel, x equals negative 1, so the x-intercept is negative 1. That's the point negative 1, 0. The y-intercept, you want to ignore the x part, but you can't ignore the negative sign. We're able to ignore the plus sign here because a positive didn't make a difference. Positive 2 and just regular 2 are the same number. Here, because there's a minus in front of it, you do need to keep that negative there. So we'll ignore the x part, but we're going to keep negative 2y equals negative 6. Divide by negative 2 on both sides. You get y equals 3. So the y-intercept is 3, which is the point 0, 3. And that's all there is to it. You totally got this. Believe in yourself.